Welcome to Football Fever, another Monday night, and boy, we've got a jam-packed show again. We'll be catching up with all the latest in the World Club Championship that everybody's talking about and wondering when did this tournament even take place. Well, it's happening right now, and we'll have all the latest news about it. Also, we'll be catching up with all the latest in the transfers and what's happening in the A-League. We've got a huge show when it comes to the NPL with some massive games that have been played over the weekend, and we'll also catch up with a former A-League coach, Gary Van Eggmond, who is now back in the coaching ranks with Hills United in the NPL 1. We'll catch up with Gary around 7:45, and of course all the latest big transfers as they happen in the English Premier League. But once again, I'm glad that we're joined by my mate, the one and only Mr. Geordie, the Newcastle fanatic. Andy O, good evening.
Evening, Chubbs. Adrian, evening, boys.
And of course, my other man, Adrian Runich, who's enjoying himself today because tomorrow he'll be sailing off on a holiday with his missus to Bali. Look at that smile on his face.
Buzzing. I can't wait, boys. How are we?
Beautiful, beautiful.
Boys, we weren't on last week because of the King's public holiday, but we're back this week. And Andy, football doesn't seem to stop, mate. The World Club Championship has started. We're going to look into that a little bit later. But what are your thoughts a little bit? Have you caught much on Foxtel at all? Have you seen any of the games? It's really just creeped up on us, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Well, we mentioned it the other week, how it sort of crept up. But, yeah, just caught up bits and pieces, Chubbs. Unfortunately, or however you look at it, I got news about that scoreline this morning when I watched a bit of highlights at Bayern Munich and Auckland City game, which was obviously a bit.
Yeah, I'll have a little bit to say about that later.
Yeah, which I know we will, but just the usual, Chubbs. I mean, as you know, with being EPL Tragics, it's a bit hard when there's no domestic league games on. But we always seem to find something, and there's obviously a lot of football in Australia with the NPL seasons. Obviously here in New South Wales and also down in Victoria, which I'll keep a little bit of a close eye on as well. But yeah, no, still a lot going on. But haven't really delved into the Club World Cup too much at this stage. But I know we'll go through a few interesting results and teams and players that are on the show there, because there's obviously a lot of talent still going around.
Adrian, what are your thoughts? Have you caught up with any of the games, or what are you thinking so far?
I watched the Inter Miami game on Sunday, and I watched the Porto and Palmeiras game this morning. Watched the highlights of Bayern versus Auckland and seen what Michael Elise had to say after the game as well. But yeah, it's crept on us very quickly. But football's football, and when you're missing the EPL already, I'm going to grab anything to watch anything at the moment that's related to football, I must say.
100%. We've got.
Chubbs, can we just remind everyone how you actually watch the Club World? Because I know you sent a message around over the weekend.
You can actually watch it on Foxtel. Foxtel's showing every game. KO's showing every game, and also you can download the Dan's app and watch it for free as well. So there's no subscription to. There is a subscription, but they're actually having the World Club Championship for free. So there's 3 different ways you can watch it, either through Foxtel, KO, or Dan's Sport.
Yeah, beautiful.
So definitely. I mean, the one thing I can say I enjoy about this is the time of the games. I mean, I know they do clash a little bit with our work, but it's nice not having to wake up at 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning.
Yeah,
it's always good to watch some games at lunchtime at decent time. So that's been good. So yeah, we'll talk about the walk. We'll talk about that a little later. What we'll get into is we've got some news on the A-League. We'll start with because I made a video about this, Andy, as you remember, on Sigasic of Sydney FC, and we were talking about he could be moving to Rapid Vienna at Austria. Well, I can tell you now that agreement has now collapsed, with Portsmouth, the English Championship, stepping in and hijacking the move. So instead of heading to Rapid Vienna, Sigasic is now set to join Portsmouth, where he'll follow Australians Hayden Matthews, Thomas Windingham and Jacob Farrell are already playing. Also, in the other news, we've got Matthew Miller, the former Macarthur FC right back. He's ended an overseas stint and he's currently in negotiations with the Brisbane Roar. So, as we broke that story with Segesic about going to Rapid Vienna, but now, as we can see, Portsmouth have hijacked the deal, so he'll be moving to the English Championship, which I think is a good move for him. And he's a hot talent, scores plenty of goals, and I think we've got to keep a close eye and see how we follow him closely at Portsmouth, because I think you'll be hearing a lot of Segesic.
Yeah, well, a fantastic talent, as we know, and Portsmouth's been one of those clubs where that they've loved their Aussies over the year. I think even Kasika Yengi was there quite recently as well. A club that, as we know, back in the day, boys, was actually floating around in the Premier League, producing fantastic players that we used to watch week in, week out in the Premier League. But yeah, it's a big move for them. For Adrian, and hopefully the league. It's a fantastic league over there, as we know. And he, being one league under the Premier League, which is where sort of you have a lot of eyes on him. We see what he can do here domestically in the A League. So surprising that it's been hijacked, the move. Generally, when a lot of these clubs in Europe want these type of players, obviously there isn't such a bigger demand, so to speak, and I mean that respectfully, but look, obviously Portsmouth has seen something in it and came in with a load offer, and off he goes. So great move. It's always good to be over there in England, especially in the Championship.
100%. It's a good start for him, and hopefully, one day we'll see him in the EPL, but definitely it's a good stepping stone, the Championship. It's a very hard league, as we know, and a lot of Aussies have gone in the Championship and worked themselves into the Premier League and that, so it's actually a great stepping stone, and probably no disrespect to Rapid Vienna, but I think moving to the Championship, Portsmouth, is probably going to be a better step for him, Age.
I think it's probably better for his football. The English barrier maybe as well helps a lot with Austria versus obviously England, and the possibility of more open football. I think in the English Championship, I think it's a lot more open than the Austrian league. I'm not saying the quality's different. I'm just saying the way that they play as opposed to Austria. An English Championship. I think he'll thrive in that little environment. Being a number 10 in that situation, I think we'll see the best out of Adrian.
Callum Timmins also had moved from the Newcastle Jets. He's moved to the Perth Glory. We're still, Costa Barbarouses looks like still will be finalising his deal with the Western Sydney. So that looks like to be happening. Reece Hewley, Reece Hewley, we know it was at Westerlo in Belgium. He's back at Sydney FC as well. So he's come back to Sydney FC. So there's a little bit happening there with players coming back from overseas or moving from overseas to the A-League, which is good. The A-League now seems to be getting a lot of players moving overseas once again, and we've had a lot of players moving, which is great for the game and especially for football in this country. One thing we want to catch up on, because we never had a chance to, because we didn't have the show, the great news for us, again, we qualified for our Six World Cup in our time away. The Tony Popovich took after Graham Arnold, and there were a lot of, when he took over, there were even question marks were we even going to qualify. We were a little bit out of form, but him and Paul Aikon have done a wonderful job, and we beat a Japan team. Okay, that was under strength, but whatever. We finally got that result 1-0, and then we followed up with a great result against Iran, beating them 2-1 as well. So it's great news for our game, and it's very important that the Socceroos always qualify for the World Cup, because we know financially we need that money that we get from qualifying for the World Cup. But the game needs it. This country needs the Socceroos doing well.
Yeah, look, Chubbs, it was sort of look, we sort of called it even before that Japan game. But even before the Saudi Arabia game midweek, because barring a disaster, we were sort of we were through. But it's just fantastic to get the confirmation and do it quite easy. Next year's World Cup is quite different. There's a lot more teams. but it's just fantastic to be there and put a positive spin on the game. Unfortunately, as we know, the media in this country tends to beat us down whenever they can, especially on the back of what we had with the A-League Grand Final, so-called, riots as such, but which we know was just always taken out of context. But yeah, no, it's just awesome for the boys to qualify, and Popper's done a great job, and he's known for his ruthlessness and his discipline, but obviously gets the results, and it's just great for the boys to qualify this far away from the competition, and we can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief. He can tweak a few things with the squad and with the team as next year approaches, but yeah, no, it's just great for the country, and like I said, I think it's good that the media can now.
I was disappointed. I seen Carl Stefanovic, Adrian, and you guys, Channel 9, going off. I mean, they had a point. We're playing Saudi Arabia. We're 20 minutes away from qualifying for the biggest tournament in the world, and yet it wasn't live on Channel 10. I mean, you could only watch it on Paramount, which is disappointing. It's the biggest game of the country to qualify for a World Cup, and we couldn't even get it on free-to-air TV. And that's something that, in our game, I know that the football in this country, we're still fighting for. We're still fighting for that. Unfortunately, we're in 2025, and we're still fighting to try and get our Socceroos one game away from a World Cup to get them on free-to-air TV.
Yeah, see, it's not right. It's not right. You've got State of Origin on free-to-air TV. You've got the AFL Grand Final, NRL Grand Final.
On the bandwagon. When the World Cup comes along, they'll be jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, but it should be free to air. Something that big, it should be free to air. Everything, the Olympics are free to air in this country. So why? Well, I think it's on stand now. But even still, some channels are on free to air. So why something like this are we having to go onto Paramount and then getting cut off or whatever it is, whatever the reason is? Then
it's a joke.
It's not fair. It's almost becoming laughable at the situation that the football in this country has been put in, as opposed to other codes.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a disgrace. And like I said, now that they've qualified, and you watch when the World Cup comes around, you'll see that the usual ones that are bagging the code and bagging the sport and carrying on about flares and all this other crap that it's part of the game. They'll be jumping on with the Socceroo scarf and all the rest of it on TV, and you cross the broadcast where they're carrying they're wearing the scarf and all the rest of it. It just suits their agenda when they wanted to, So, but it's a disgrace. The fact that you can't get the national team and the biggest sporting code or the biggest sport in the world football, which everyone knows, and when we struggle to be able to watch it properly, without having to subscribe to one of God knows how many bloody, channels or what's the name that are out there. So, it's just ridiculous. It quite frustrates me, as you can probably tell. But look, we're there. Wait till the World Cup comes around, and we'll see these people eating their hats, hopefully.
Yeah, what we might do, boys, I think we'll turn our attention to the NPL. I'll get Andy to get up all the results of the Premier League and NPL 1. We'll go through all the results. We'll go through some games because the Premier League's really heating up, that battle for the top spot. There was a bit of chaos in those games. Thunder and lightning stopped the games, but we'll go through all that. The results aren't going to change. We'll go through that, but I'll get Andy to go through all the Premier League and then the NPL 1 results.
Yeah, Chubb. So we got back on Saturday. We had Western Sydney Wanderers 0, Sydney United 3, St George City 3, North West Spirit 2. RP Leichhardt 1, Blacktown City 0. That was one of the games yesterday that got abandoned due to the weather. Wollongong Wolves scored a 2-0 away victory down at Central Coast. Rockdale kept on their winning run with a 4-0 win over Mount Druitt. St George Saints and Marconi drew 2-2. The other abandoned game was Sydney Olympic 2, Sutherland Sharks 1. We also had yesterday a big result for Sydney FC under 23, 6-0 away to Manly. And that leaves a standing so far with a new leader at the top on goal difference, Rockdale boys. Rockdale and Marconi both on 43 points. Spirit back in third place on 37. Arpio 33 along with Sydney United and Blacktown City. Sydney United being another team that's jumped in the last few weeks with some positive results. Sydney FC also up to 7th spot, 27. St George Saints 26, Manly 24, along with Wollongong. Sydney Olympic 23, St George City 22, Sutherland 15, Wanderers on 13, Mount Druitt 9, and Central Coast Mariners at the bottom of the table on 7 points. Chubbs, you want to speak about a few of these results before we get into the
I'll get you to
Premier
say
League?
the League One results, and then we'll go through all the games. Yeah.
All right, mate, no problem. So League One, we had, as I bring up the results, we had on Saturday, Northern Tigers 3, Interlions 0, Dulwich Hill, Chubbers Mob 2, Bankstown City Lions 1, Rydalmere 2, SD Raiders 1, Bankstown City and Hakoah Sydney drew 2-2, AZ University New South Wales and Mounties Wanderers 1-1 there. Hills United 2, Newcastle Jets 0, Bulls Academy 2, Macarthur Eames 1, and we also had Bonnyrigg White Eagles 0, Blacktown Spartans 2. The standings in the New South Wales League One, Bulls Academy on top on 38, Northern Tigers 36, SD Raiders back down to third now, 35 points, University of New South Wales 34. Then we got Rydalmere and Blacktown Spartans on 30, Newcastle Jets on 28, along with Interlions, Canterbury Bankstown 25, Bankstown City and Hakoah Sydney on 23, Hills United and Dulwich Hill both on 21, Mounties Wanderers 17, Macarthur Eames 16, and Bonnyrigg White Eagles at the bottom there on 12 points.
As our super chat comes in, yeah, we've had some super chat already. Ivan Lukic saying Sydney United and Rockdale both have 5 wins straight. Yeah, we're going to touch on that. They've both been on fire, especially Sydney United, really starting to find their feet. Rockdale now on top of the table. Brown Bear 19 says, I agree, all games need to be on free to TV. Correct, yeah, we agree with that too. But boys, let's start with the Premier League. The first game that I thought will touch that a team that's really on fire, and we all know, and Adrian will know this very well because he's played there. Sydney FC 6-0 away to Manly. That's a hard place to go, and Manly have been going really well. And we spoke about this, Andy and Adrian, that when the A-League was going to stop at Sydney FC, but when I look at Sydney FC's lineup, they've still got a lot of the younger boys. It's not like they've dropped down many boys, but they're on fire. Their results are really starting to stand out, and that's a huge win, 6-0 down there at Manly.
Yeah, and I don't know if you caught up with the goal scorer, boys, but young Mateus McAllister, 5 goals.
Yeah, Dylan McAllister, whose dad used to play for Sydney Olympic in Central Coast, Newcastle in the A-League.
Correct. Unbelievable talent, obviously. To score 5 goals in a single game is one hell of a feat, especially at this level when you're playing against the boys, the men, Adrian, as you know. Fantastic effort from him, but that's a massive, massive scoreline for Sydney FC. And as we mentioned a few weeks ago when the A-League season stopped, we thought a lot of those players were going to be filtering down to the under-23s, but you're right, Chubbs. They've still kept a lot of the younger boys in and still getting the results against a Man United team, which, in themselves, sitting mid-table, generally very, very tough to beat at home, but that's a huge result for Sydney FC. And a huge shout-out to young Mateus. That's an unbelievable feat to score 5 goals.
Adrian, Manly gone off the ball a little bit. They were really firing, and they've gone off the ball, and that'd be a disaster of a result on the weekend for them.
It would hurt for them too, especially losing to the Sydney, because in history, if ever, even when I was, getting older and playing, a lot of the Sydney FC boys are from Manly or Manly Juniors, so it always would hurt a little bit more. I would think. I know McAllister himself. He's a Manly boy. He was in the Manly Juniors. Well, his dad was, playing there. He was obviously a lot younger back then. But as Andy said, 5 goals still. Anyone knows that any NPL player can tell you that if, the young A-League boys, they get on a roll on a day, they can run you ragged. You can be doing 13, 14 Ks just doing doggies, and it might be a long day for you. And it just, honestly, it seems like for Manly, that's what's happened here on the weekend.
100%. We'll go to league leaders Rockdale beating Mount Druitt 4-0. Mount Druitt are looking like they're going to be one of those clubs that have come up and really looking now could be headed down. They really need to start picking up points shortly. It's a tough place to go down there at Rockdale, 4-0, especially, Andy, when Jurasevsky wasn't on the score sheet. Now, I had a little bit of a funny story here. That game finished with lightning, so there was still, I believe, 12 minutes to play. I believe Mount Druitt wanted the game to be played, and then some of the players of Mount Druitt said, why do we want to continue? Goal difference could become a problem. And then I believe they all agreed and accepted the 4-0, which is probably at the end. They're right. You don't want, you don't know if goal difference will come into it, but that's a huge, like Rockdale now really have found their feet, Age and Andy. They're on a roll. Like we said, 5 wins on a row. We had Paul D here not long ago, and he spoke about those starting to really come good, and they've hit first spot again, equal points with Marconi after Marconi. St George equalised late in that game, but Rockdale are on fire at the moment.
So Chapman, what are you saying? Are you saying that Paulie hasn't lost a game since he come on and spoke to us?
Oh, that's true. Where is good aiming here?
I think the biggest thing that they'd probably be kicking themselves, and I don't think it's a coincidence that's happened when they exited from the Australia Cup, so they can sort of focus now on the league, and we know they're probably dying to go one better, Chubbs, and they've always been a team that's thrived in the Australia Cup and got through to a few of the later rounds, so they'd be kicking themselves about that, and now they've obviously put all their focus on the league, and that's a huge result. I think we even missed last week when they beat Marconi when we weren't on air for the King's birthday public holiday that weekend, which is a big result as well to topple Marconi at the top of the table.
Marconi would be kicking themselves because they were 2-1 up, and then like you said, there was the disruption in the game. Then they came back, and St George scored late. And this St George team, they're really playing for me above and beyond. They're a team that came up from League One, and really last year when I was at Hills, they managed to stay up, and they're doing well again, and that's a huge result for them, even grabbing a point against Marconi. And Marconi would see that Age as a bit of a missed opportunity, such a late equaliser.
Look, St George they've got some experience in that team too, with players like Danaskos, and they know their way around a footy pitch. So as the season gets longer, I think players will step up, but when it's the weather's like that, Chubba, Andy, anything can happen. It's you just work your ass off and try and figure out what's going to happen, and it's as simple as that. It takes one bounce of the ball on the Astro, to go a different way or to go a bit quicker than you anticipated, and it's just that player that's willing to take the risk. And who knows? Anyone can beat anyone when it's like that. You saw the weather, and it was a bit extreme, but I'm not surprised. Honestly, Chubb, I'm not surprised that a team can come back. Sometimes that break hurts the team. It's like half-time, when someone's rolling into a half-time break, you don't want half-time. You want it to keep going. So it's football.
A couple of weeks ago, I spoke about Central Coast. I had my concerns, but I thought, now they might be getting some players back, but they're really struggling, them and Mount Druitt, and now there is a bit of a gap, and they're really in trouble, and they went down to Wollongong Wolves 2-0. It'll be really concerning times for Central Coast, Andy. We know they've got a lot of problems off the field as a club, but, they are one club that could be facing, relegation, which is not where they would want to be.
Yeah, no, not at all, Chubbs. And obviously an A-League club doesn't really want to be in this position. And because generally people think that with A-League clubs, they've got the resources. We know they've got a massive junior system, a development system in their youth. But yeah, the way they're looking at the moment, 7 points, they're 6 points effectively from safety, with the second last spot being a playoff relegation scenario. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because a club like Central Coast, like I said, being an A-League club, shouldn't be in that position, and it's not looking well. And just above them, boys, as we know, with Western Sydney Wanderers on 13 points. So, anything can, things can change in this competition. You string a couple of wins together, then all of a sudden you can be out of that position, or a couple of losses, vice versa. You can be struggling. So, yeah, definitely not where a team like the Mariners would want to be, as you mentioned, Chubbs, especially with what's happening off the field.
100%. We're getting St. George are a great team. Love seeing them getting results this year. Casellas is playing really good, and we've got, lads, any NPL transfer room as well. I am going to speak about that because, as we know, round 21, the window does open for all NPL clubs. I know we've been busy at Dully, and I know a lot of clubs are busy, and that's going to be, I mean,
A couple of weeks away, eh?
yeah, it's only one this week, and then next week, yeah, players will be able to bring in new players. And I know there's a lot of clubs chasing players at the moment and getting players because, as we know, Adrian, this is part of the window where, especially in the Premier League where they've got the top six, so it's the window now is going to be really important for some of those teams.
It's anyone can pick up anyone. And one little transfer, I remember being at Sydney United or Sutherland, we've brought in players, good players, middle of the year, and it can change a whole season around. It can be that little momentum shift, that extra person in the dressing room. I just speaking on transfers in general, it can change the whole structure of a change room, good and bad though. And it's about getting the right fit. And
maybe you should get on the blower and get some rumours happening, Adrian.
Mate, I'm not one to start rumours or throw names in a hat because I'd start throwing my own one in there and start making a comeback, So
I'll tell you one result that was really surprising because I was following it on Saturday night and I was going, wow, Spirit were up 2-0, travelling really well halfway through the second half. When I then went to look at the full-time results, St. George, Manny Spanadakis, another we had on here, and David Burr, managed to turn that result. And that was a huge win for St. George to be able to turn that around and win that game 3-2 because, they've been a little bit struggling as well. They needed that 3 points. And Spirit will see that as a lost opportunity to close the gap on Rockdale and Marconi, especially when we know that Rockdale and Spirit, Andy and Adrian, are fighting for that spot where they can join the B League at the end of the season, whoever finishes higher out of those two teams.
Yeah, 100%. That's a massive result for St. George City. 2-0 down, it's always a scary result, but boys, isn't it? We know that always with football. So
it's funny when momentum switches in a game, how quickly you can lose momentum.
Well, absolutely, and the goals came quite late. I think they scored in the 75th minute, the first goal to make it 2-1. So, and then two goals in the last 2 goals 3 minutes apart. Boys, an interesting player. I don't know if you're aware at St. George City is Lewis Curry. He was actually overseas in the Manchester City Academy.
Correct, he was.
In his younger days, yeah. Had a big raps on him, but obviously now he's back here applying his trade in the New South Wales Premier League, which is fantastic. And yeah, he scored the winning goal there, but great result for St. George City, not so good for Spirit.
What can you tell us? Ante Juric and the boys down there, Ante Juric has finally found their feet and they're starting to get, like we had on our Super Chat, they've done 5 wins in a row now. And I predicted Sydney United at the start of the season. They were my dark horse for the competition, and I'm glad they're starting to find their form because I think in the top 6 they're going to be a real danger because if you look at their team on paper, it is quality.
Their teams, I think, personally, I think it's a good mix of youth and experience. They've got the young legs. But he said in regards to Rockdale, I think at the time, Sydney with the Australian Cup, the Waratah Cup, because at the time when that started, their form wasn't as good. So I think they've played the more games. I think the more games kind of forced them to play a quicker version or get to a quicker standard that when they Ante wanted them to get to.
Well, a new manager coming in, getting used to Ante's style.
Yeah, well, even this past weekend, the keeper, Orlovic, he made a save at 0-0 at the start of the game from the penalty spot. And from there, they just took off. And I think that's, Paddy and told me he scored his first goal after a couple of weeks. It's all looking, the ball's rolling over there at United. And I think they're hitting the form, same as, Rockdale. But it's about, not peaking too early and just getting into the final spot and taking that momentum into the end of the season.
2 clubs that are under pressure. Sutherland started the house on fire this season, but they've gone off the ball. And Olympic is a little bit inconsistent, but another big win at home. Their last game at Belmore before they have to play the rest of the games, I believe, out of Park Lee. But they won 2-1 against Sutherland, which was a huge result, and the pressure on Labi Halidi because they just sit outside the 6. And, they've still got a good chance, Andy, to be getting that 6 in the Olympic.
Oh yeah, how many times do we say Chubbs, a club that big It's got to be doing better, and quite well resourced, as a very, very established NPL club, with all the success they've had in the past. But yeah, look, at this stage, I don't think they can make the 6 Chubs. I'll say this early: 10 points is a big gap.
10 points? No, they're only 33. Olympics on 29, so they're only 4 points out.
29, are they? Or
oh, sorry.
Yeah, they're sitting in 7th.
Yeah.
Sorry, 29.
Yeah, they're only 4 points out, so they're not far away.
Yeah, apologies. Yeah, so, but yeah, no, that's definitely. I'm looking a few weeks back.
I think
I'm still on King's birthday. But yeah, no, definitely. In that case, definitely achievable. And mate, like I said, a club that big, you'd think they'd be pushing for success in the league, and they got to be, because they're very, very well supported, as you know, Chubbs, and quite well resourced as we speak. Just on the transfers. Is there any particular club that stands out in terms of they really, really got it? I mean, apart from the ones languishing down towards the bottom, but Chubbs.
I think every club, even Marconi look, even Rockdale will be looking. I think every club, every coach at this part of the season, because there's 30 rounds, and I look at us at Dudley, we lost 7-9 players. I mean, we're going to Newcastle Jets this week with the bare 11, and we're debuting 5 under 20. So it's a part of a season where you really struggle with injury, suspensions, and so on. So I think every club will definitely be looking at this window and just hanging for it to come as quickly as possible.
How hard is it for a club like you at Dudley to hold on to players that are potentially being looked at by these?
Well, we have had 2 players that have been looked up by high clubs. Now, these players have gave us the assurance that they want to finish the season with us, but you can only hope. You don't want to stop these boys from going further. Like, we're happy to help them at the end of the season, but I mean, you can't end if a player, unfortunately, in our league, if a player wants to go and there is a higher team coming, it's very hard to stop. Money always comes into play as well. So, it's a hard time for coaches as well for us, because it is a little bit unsettling, because you just don't know what will happen next week.
How long is the window open for, boys?
10 days.
Only 10 days. So it doesn't even give you guys, hypothetically, if one of the boys told you, Chubba, hey, mate, like, I'm going to St. George, for example, it doesn't really give you anything.
No, that's why we've already started doing the talks with all our players individually, and you can only hope that they're telling you, what their intentions are. But then again, you just never know when that window opens last minute. You don't know what club can come in for one of your players. I mean, we've got players like Isaac Corvat. He's an A-League player. He was playing for Macarthur Bulls. So there is players in the NPL1 system that can play in the Premier League. And just like us, we're getting players from NPL2 that we're going to be attracting to come to us when the window opens. So that's just the nature of the beast. And I think this window opens too late for me. I think this window in 30 rounds should have opened at round 15 and not
16 for sure.
Not round 21, only for 10 games to go. It's a little bit of it's very hard. It's not that easy.
Not at all. It's more so going to benefit the teams in and around the finals position if they're looking for a little bit more depth, if anything. Like, that they could go after a club. One of the boys, say it, from Marconi, went after someone from Mount Druitt, and they said, hey, we're going to pick the best player from Mount Druitt, or just, one of the best 3, and we'll put him into the squad and help us out in the finals. Because,
and you got those clubs as well that are still in the Australia Cup, so looking for a little bit of depth and to be able to rest players come the business end of the season. I agree. I think if this transfer window opens, say, probably a month earlier, say early May, would probably be a bit more beneficial. I like the fact through the transfer window.
Yeah, the huge game was RPA Blacktown for the top 6 as well, and RPA winning that game 1-0, which is a huge result for RPA, and it keeps them close to their chance of finishing in that top 2. But when we look at this, you can see now, like, Rockdale, Marconi, the RPS, the Sydney Uniteds, Blacktown City, this top 6 with Spirit there. it's really shaping up to be a great battle. Olympic now coming into the fold, Sydney FC youth. I mean, those 8 clubs for those 6 spots going to be a top battle in these last remaining 11 games.
Oh, for sure, and it's just going to get tighter, you know. Like I said, and I keep referring to it, boys. I think the Australia Cup kicking back off with.
You were frozen for a moment, Andy, but you're back with us now.
Sorry, mate.
In the Premier League too, like we said, the table now, you've got Bulls Academy on top on 38 points, Northern Tigers second on 36, SD Raiders 35. The big shock in our league is Macarthur Rams. Well, they're down the bottom 16, but the big shock is Bonnyrigg on 12 points coming last. Now, one team that Andy we spoke about and we had on SD Raiders. Now, they've probably are suffering now in their league because of their cup form. They had a great run, like you said, in the Australian Cup, only got knocked out the other day. But as we said, Adrian, teams at this level playing Wednesday, Saturday, it does catch up with you. And SD Raiders, it has caught up with them, unfortunately. And it did a good cup run, has sort of deteriorated a little bit of their results in their league form.
I think 100%. We're going back to what Andy said. They've got the same situation I think that Rockdale's had, but the opposite. And yes, at that level, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. The squad's not as big. There isn't as many players that you can put in from the 20s or, you know, from the subs or the bench or whatever it is. And yeah, they're starting to feel it now. And I think that they're going to maybe focus not even on the league. How far away are we from the final against United for them?
I think it's a couple of
The
weeks away.
Waratah.
Yeah, the Waratah.
Yeah. I think they'd be focusing on that a lot as well.
That'll
be in the back of their minds.
Still a couple of weeks away, 100%. They're still a couple of weeks away from that. And yeah, so the Bulls Academy, Mullah, the coach there, has done a good job. And I tip the Bulls Academy to be, you know, when I think they're probably are the strongest team in our comp. I think that they should, now that they've hit top spot, they've got a real chance of going up. Uni, New South Wales, were doing really well. A few injuries. Newcastle Jets, we know that they're up and down. So it's a very hard competition. I mean, we've gone, you know, with all our thing, we've gone back to back, which was very important for us at Dully with the 6 points to get away from that, you know, relegation zone. But this league's very hard. It's a very hard league, this one. And if you're not at your best, you get caught out. So it's still going to be a great battle there. Uni, New South Wales, SD Raiders, Northern Tigers, Bulls Academy. There's only really 4 points separating them, and that's going to be a great battle for those top 2 positions, and especially the minor premiership, which will automatically give you promotion to the Premier League.
Boys, I can tell you that game you're referring to is with SD Raiders. They were in the semi-final against Sydney United. That was last week. So Sydney United went through 2-0 on that result. But the final is still on the 2nd of July. And it's going to be Sydney United against Northern Tigers for that one. Northern Tigers won the semi-final against Apia.
Yeah, that was the surprising result where Northern Tigers upset Apia.
Yeah. I got it mixed up. I apologise. I knew one of the NPL 2 teams bloody was in the final, but I got it as SD Raiders and not. Apologise.
Yeah, no, that's all right. No worries. That's what Google's for.
See, it doesn't matter that I'm young. I still should use it.
You know us in our preparation, mate. Always last minute.
You got 3 screens up behind there.
The big shock, and I mean, people are mentioning it on our super chat as well, is Bonnyrigg really struggling. For a big club like Bonnyrigg, we knew they were like the kings of the Premier League at one stage. Bonnyrigg, you know, they were winning championships. They were always, you know, Bonnyrigg were a club that was a force, but you know, they're on the verge of maybe even getting relegated to NPL 2, which would be, you know, just not even thinkable for a big club like Bonnyrigg. And I know Franco Costantino's now moved there, gone there from Marconi as well to help out. And I know they're going to spend some money as well and try and bring in some players. But there's a 5-point gap already, and that would be a worry for a big club like Bonnyrigg, Age.
What's going on there, Chopper? Do you know anything? Because from my whole experience playing against them, they've always been exactly what you said. They've been quite big. They've been a great team. I personally always look forward to playing against them, and it was always a battle. You know, you grew up playing against players like Peterson, and they that always had decent players. So even for me, it's hard to see them there and coming last. Well, to be honest, I don't look at the your league ladder as much as the MPL one, but even to see them there, I'm surprised. So for me, I would question what's happening there. Is there questions asked? Are the players capable of getting them out of there? What's going on? Injuries, etc.
Yeah, it's surprising because, like I said, we played them as well, and they weren't the force of Bonnyrigg that we beat them as well at home. They haven't been a force this season. They've really struggled. It's going to be interesting. They're one club now. We're looking. I'm hearing a lot of names, big players, probably trying to get across there, and they're going to need to start getting some wins together because they are in trouble. And that gap gets any bigger, as we know that when you're in the last 9, 10 games of the season, it's probably the hardest part of the season to get results. And as you see, a lot of the bottom clubs, like our club, we're fighting. A lot of the bottom clubs fighting. And get results. So it's a very hard period, and Bonnyrigg, they're going to really need to start getting results quickly because they are in trouble, Andy.
Yeah, boys, I can tell you, they're not travelling too well in the youth space as well. I'm not sure if you're aware, but
Yeah.
their board's youth MPL are in MPL 3, which is really, really unheard of for a club like Bonnyrigg, who generally, you see them in MPL 1 along with your Marconis, your Sydney Uniteds of the local area. But unfortunately, their youth, they obviously had a bit of issues for a number of years now in terms of coaches and TDs and clean outs and whatnot. I don't know the exact details, but they've pummeled all the way down to MPL 3. I know some friends whose boys are there, performing quite well in MPL 3. But a club like Bonnyrigg, as you know, boys, with that rich history, another big club back in the day, should have, their youth is where, as you know, your youth is where your future is. And definitely don't want you to be languishing in MPL 3 if you want to have a successful, elder, senior type of players and squads. So, yeah, it's disappointing, but hopefully they can turn it around because, yeah, a lot of the stuff like that happens off the field, as we know. So in the front office, and it's very important to get that front office right in any particular sporting code and organisation.
100%. Yeah, we're just going to. Gary Van Eggmond will be with us shortly. We're going to speak to him. Who's Gary Van Eggmond? We know he was a coach that coached in the A League. He's had a lot of. Oh, there he is. Yeah, just right on the money. Good evening, Gary. Welcome to Football Fever.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. You got Chubby.
Yeah, Gary.
Very well. It's good to see you back here back in the coaching ranks. We know you were with the Chinese women's team under 17s. You spent some time as a director with the Newcastle Jets women's team, but now you're back in a part-time basis in my league, in League One with Hills United, a club that I know very close to my heart, with terrific people there, the president Tristan, Andrew Cruz, yourself, and results have started coming as well for Hills, which is great to see. I love to see them doing really well. How is it stepping back in the coaching with the men's side of things?
Yeah, look, I've never ever sort of pigeonholed myself into one area. Okay, so I've coached women, I've coached men, I've coached in the academy space, both men and women. I've coached under 17 national teams, under 20 national teams, both men and women, and obviously Olyroos. So I look at coaching maybe a little bit different from the perspective of how you as an individual, you have to adapt to that environment. And the whole part of it is, one, you're looking to improve individuals. Two, you're looking to improve the team. And then how do you actually do that from a coaching perspective? Re the management of the players as well. So not only from an information and a content, because that's also important to understand where the level is, and then what do you focus on more? Is it the more technical side of it? Is it the more tactical side of it? Is it the more mental side of it? Is there, what part of it can you do from a physical perspective? And so now I'm 2 nights a week and looking to see how I can manage things in that space to ensure that the players get what they need, but it has to be nearly exactly what they need. There's some areas that I believe we need to still do, but what's the more important, right? So it's great. It's a fantastic challenge, and I'm really enjoying it.
Gary, you're very unique, like you said, where you've been gone from the women's game to the men's game, women's game, men's game. How is it? Is it much change as a coach going from, like, I've always found that fascinating. Like, I coach myself. I've never been in the women's space, but the women's game, we know your daughter Emily is flying as well overseas, and the game is flying in this country. But how is it hard going from the women's to the men's game? Is it a change, or philosophy still pretty much the same? Football's football.
Yeah, I think you have to understand a few things. This is a bit generic in regards to thinking about men and women and the differences, right? So men need to perform before they feel they belong, but women need to belong before they perform. Okay, and that's fairly consistent along the ages as far as both men, males, females. And then it's again looking at it, and it's really interesting from a I suppose from a sport perspective as well. I mean, if we look at the women's sport in general and compared to men's sport, most sports adapt. So, for example, tennis, 3 sets, 5 sets. If we look at the cricket, they bring the boundary rope in comparison to the boundary rope being out. The AFL, the grounds are smaller in comparison to the men's, and so is the duration. The duration in rugby league is less in comparison to the men's. Okay, women's sport, it isn't. Women's sport, it's the same size goal, it's the same amount of time, and it's the same size field. So that lends itself possibly to more the athletic player in particular, with speed and possibly good VO2. But the technical side of it has caught up a lot from the women's game as well. So the amount that you can do in the female space now is far greater than, say, 10 years ago, because of the development of the women coming through their development pathway has been a lot better for them in regards to the tactical side of it, and obviously the technical side of it.
Like you said, Gary, now you're back at Hills coaching in MPL1. I know Hills have always had quality coaches, big name coaches are always trying to push, the bar as high as they can. How did that happen? How did you get in contact? How did they find you? How did you get back at Hills?
Yeah, look, I know Luke Casserly quite well. I played with Luke at Marconi for many, many years. I was involved with Luke in regards to the national teams when he was the national team manager of overseeing all of the national teams. Patrick Swanswyk I've known for many years as well. I had Patrick as an assistant coach with me through the young Socceroos and also with the Olyroos as well. So both of those individuals have had experience there at Hills. And even prior to this year, I'd also been introduced to Tristan. I've known Tristan for a number of years. And so, look, it's football. Things just weren't happening for the club, and he felt he wanted to make a change, and he reached out, and then, the rest is history.
Yeah, I know. There was a club, I was there last year. It's a great club. I mean, unfortunately, we did get relegated. I know they had ambitions to go up. It probably didn't work out for Shane, like you said, as much as he wanted to this year. And you've come in. When you come in now, is it more about, again, just settling out, getting out of that relegation now? Now you're starting to get back-to-back victories and climb the table as high as you can in the last 9 games. And are you going to be doing, we were talking about this transfer window opening. Is that like something that you might look into, or is it hard when you haven't been around, or is it something that you're going to take an opportunity to have a look at in next week?
Well, you're at Dulwich Hill, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I've seen a number of good players from Dulwich Hill that we've.
So, mate, we're in equal points with yourself. It's not like we're doing all right. We're batting above our beyond.
No, look, we'll definitely look at some players within the transfer window. I mean, I'm still getting my head around the point system,
Yeah, that's
because
it.
obviously in the A League you don't have a point system. The other part of it is if you have a contract within the A League, that you have a fairly strong organisation in the PFA that protects those players very, very well and does a great job, by the way. Um, and this is completely different. This is a different environment. So look, we'll definitely look and see if there are some players that are keen to come to Hills, and then we'll sort of make a decision from there.
They're a club. They're working on the School of Excellence, I believe, and working on Hills United. They as a club, they're doing a lot of great things off the field. They're really good. The youth have come good. The girls coming through. So it's a great club, and it's a good club you're at. And like you said, it's a club with a lot of ambitions and doing really well off the field.
Hey, look, I spent many, many years living in the Hills. My wife's from Kellyville, and we had properties in Kellyville and Borkham Hills. So prior to us moving up to Newcastle in 2001, we lived in the Hills, and sometimes we go back down because my brother and sister-in-law still live in the area, and it's unrecognisable for the size of the Hills now. And you think about that, and you think about the number of potential players that will develop in the Hills, and because it's a huge catchment area now. So there's great growth potential there in the Hills, and like you said, the Centre of Excellence is about to get underway as well, and it all goes really well for the development of players within that area. And Tristan has done a fantastic job. I don't know how he fits his business into doing all the work with.
He's got a lot of passion. He doesn't stop.
He does. He does. He has a lot of passion with Hills, and they and obviously the Hills Association and the Hills United have basically come together as well. So everyone's going together in the right direction, and you can only see that area really improving, and obviously Hills United becoming much more of a force.
Before I give you to the boys, are you only there for the short term, or you're looking at staying there, or is it just the short term at the moment?
Yeah, look, at this moment, I'm there till the end of the season, and then we'll obviously see how things go. But I've been a professional coach for many, many years, and I'm looking for a good project. I'm 60 this month, so time stands still for no man, right? Okay, so but I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. They're a great bunch of boys, and like you've already said, it's a really well run
Mate, I still
club.
remember when I was a Marconi junior watching you play right back at Marconi, mate. You were flying down the Dutchman, down that right back, playing for the Socceroos. Quality. Andy, Adrian?
Yeah, look, Gary, Chubb stole my thunder a bit in terms of how the role came about, but my daughter plays at the youth level, and I know Hills have always been a huge club in the youth. Is there any interest there that you're sort of, or are you overlooking anything in terms of the youth aspect coming through, or is it just really at the senior space at this stage?
Yeah, just the senior space at this stage. But look, it's pretty important for um, to also have a bit of an understanding of the young ones coming through. I've been down to the boys. I've been down to the youth league of the boys and had a look at those kids coming through from 13s through to 18s. And I'd like to obviously have a look at the girls as well when I got a chance to come down and have a look at them, because they're building a total club with both men and women and boys and girls, and they're in a position now where the TD of the boys, Kevin, is doing Kevin Leslie is doing a great job there, and it's always a tough ask. They're in NPL 1, and we're an NPL 2 team, and most young players are attracted to Sydney FC or West Sydney Wanderers. Obviously the Bulls, you've got Central Coast not too far away as well, and then you've got your NPL 1 teams and your established historic clubs in Apia and Marconi and Sydney Olympic, for example. So for us to ensure that we try and keep our juniors, we've got to start to look to see how we can have a point of difference as well. And it's not going to be a financial point of difference, but it can be a coaching point of difference. And that's something that we're definitely going to look to try and work on and look to become more of an attractive club from that perspective. And I think you've got to understand where you sit in the whole ecosystem as well, as far as a club is concerned. And sure, you've got ambitions for X, Y, and Z, but then what is the reality? You're not an A-League club. Okay. Are there possibilities to be a B-League club? Well, not at the moment. MPL 1, definitely. Right. Okay. So it depends where, obviously, the association and Hills United are looking to plan.
Just sorry, before I...
quick one on the just a quick one on the how you're finding the standard of New South Wales League One. There's a lot of talent running around in the lower divisions, and just interested to get your thoughts on the talent and the standard of football.
Yeah, look, I think the part of it is you've got to start to look to see how you can back the players a little bit too in regards to how they play. I mean, obviously 2 nights a week. I think one of the biggest differences is fitness. Just from the perspective of what they can actually physically do and repeat sprints and things of that nature. But from a technical perspective, and from a tactical perspective, they're very capable. And I think we've sort of proven that over the last couple of weeks that. Given the information and given the belief to the players that they can play a certain style of footy, and ensure that it's not just nice to watch, but it's also effective. Because at the end of the day, you want to play a style of football that is going to win football matches because it's a top competition. So no, I've been quite impressed with the level. I mean. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, because I think I've got a couple of really good players within Hills United from a technical perspective, and I don't need Chubba, scouting them and looking to see how you can take them to Dulwich right at this moment, right? So, but it's great, I think the level. I don't think it surprised me, but it's been welcoming, if you know what I mean. It's been great to see.
Did you?
Gary, I don't think Chubba's asking for next year to see what you're doing. I think he's just keeping his possibilities open. I think he wants to make sure there's other avenues. But my question to you is, I know you've been coaching for a very long time. Do you personally have an area of youth or the women's game or the senior males game that you think that you relate to the player more so than other areas, other groups of people?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think as I've got older, I started off and I was at Northern Spirit as a youth coach, and I was a pretty fit sort of a guy in regards to how I played. I basically kicked people for a living. That was the type of person or type of player I was. So, Arnie said, look, come in and help with the youth. Now, these poor kids, I still ring some of them and apologise to what I did, like we're doing 400s, 200s, hill runs, you name it. And, you then start to get more information and you start to develop it more as a coach. And even the second time that I came back to the Jets, for example, when I had Emil Heskey there, and we recruited some very, very good young ones, which it's been great to see them come through in Goodwin and Birighetti, Connor Chapman, Josh Brillante, Adam Taggart. These boys were only 18, 19 years of age when they were playing, but I didn't relate to the players as well. I always felt that I'm a top coach in regards to, I understand it tactically, I understand it from a session perspective, and I probably lent myself to being at that moment a much better assistant coach than I was a manager. Whereas now, you're older and wiser. I feel very, very prepared as a head coach now, just because of the experience that I've had, and I've worked with some really good coaches as well within the national team setups, which has been really good and really beneficial for me as well. So probably now, and I think it just changes if that sort of answers your question. I think from a head coach perspective, yep, absolutely. Whether that's male, men, or females, yep, absolutely. But you've got to change yourself. You've got to change your persona and the way that you deal with things. Okay, and that's where the experience that I've had, I've been able to do that with the different coaching environments that I've had, and I think that's the real benefit that I've had, and I've been so privileged to be able to go into those areas to see how you can get the most out of players. Because the chair and the whip doesn't work, definitely with women, and girls. You can't be in a position where you're like that, but from a boy's perspective, you can be a little bit more firmer, and I think that's important that you sort of portray that too.
Gary?
That's what I'll ask next. I was going to ask, the man managing, woman managing, is there, how big of a difference is it? Because you were saying about the belonging and whatnot earlier. How much of a difference do you have to not necessarily watch what you say, but there is a certain line where you kind of think that you might lose them if you say too much to certain people. Where I've been in football. You've been around long enough that some kids, man or woman, if they're not that type of kid or man, it might go the complete opposite way.
Yeah, but it's a tough world at the moment. Like I grew up through the school of hard knocks. I mean, I was a junior with Arpia Leichhardt, and I remember distinctly having the likes of Terry Butler, John Bradley, Arno Batonja, and Mark Pullen. Now, Mark Pullen was a very intimidating guy. Okay, I mean, he was a big bloke, and for 6 months, I used to have to sprint into the shower, try and shower as quick as possible, get my gear on, try and get out of the dressing room before he came in. Because if he came in, he would size me up in the showers, and I might just sort of fly in the air a little bit, maybe, and hit some tiles on the other side. And that was his way, though, of keeping me grounded. Right? Yeah. He didn't want me to get too big for my boots because he felt I had a real chance. And so that was the way that he, had an interest in me, and he was trying to develop and ensure that I didn't become too big for my boots, that I wasn't in a position that I felt like, yeah, okay, I've made it, right? But you try and do that now, you're in massive trouble, right? So it's a case of, the kids coming through now, or, where's the resilience? Well, there's not much resilience coming through school. Fight or flight, as far as parents are concerned. Well, it's mostly flight, unfortunately. And it's really coaches who are giving the kids the basis of trying to develop resilience. There's participation awards at school all the time now. And there's a lot more inclusivity, which is great. I think that's a real positive side for us as a society and culturally. But I still think that, when it comes to high performance sport, it's not for everyone. And unfortunately, that sometimes those messages get mixed a little bit, shall we say.
Gary, before we let you go, I have to ask about your daughter, Emily Van Eggmond. Incredible career, over 150 internationals now with the country, playing for Birmingham City. Did you think firstly she'll get this far, or does she still come back to dad? Do you still question her about her game? Do you still give her tips? Are you still on her? What is that relationship?
Look, we've had a wonderful relationship. Look, I've been in a position where I've been able to manage her development. She always played with boys from a young age till she was 14, 15 years of age. And then, we had the Institute of Sport programs, or the Academy of Sport programs back then, which we don't have now, for the girls. And Pardon?
A big shame we don't have the AIS anymore.
Well, again, I mean, I don't know if we look at we had it for the boys as well, and I know the FA are doing a similar situation where they're making some of those types of institutes around the country now. But I'm sort of thinking it would be better if, for example, we gave money to A-League clubs to ensure that we could have full-time coaches. So the difference for me in the institute programs were the full-time coaching and the competition that we had, and plus the service providers to ensure the players. So S&C, you had psych, you've obviously got good medical, all of that. We had the New South Wales Institute of Sport playing in the youth competition, was probably 3 or 4 years above the age group. Now I think you're in a position that if you mandated A-League clubs to have full-time coaches from 16s up, so that we're in a position that the players could be taken in morning sessions to do small group work or positional specific work, and you have a full-time coach, which is no what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a disrespect to the coaches that are coaching in that level at the moment, but they're all part-time at this stage. Okay, but if you brought full-time coaches in, they're going to be better than what the part-time coaches are going to be, and then you have the kids in environments which are going to be better again, and they're going to develop more and more. And I think if you mandated that for A-League clubs, you would see the better NPL clubs. They want to then start to get on that bandwagon as well. They start to develop and put full-time coaches in, because where in the world do you have an institute program? There's no way known that clubs overseas are going to say, oh yeah, by the way, you're just going to go to an institute. Like if you're at Ajax or Wolfsburg or Leipzig or wherever you're going to be, yeah, okay, you're just going to go and work in a institute program. That would never happen, right? Because they've already got their full-time coaches in those lower age groups, right? So I would look at it and do something more in regards to that, and ensuring that the A-League clubs spent that money that was given to them definitely on the coaching side of it. And so what I'm getting back to, obviously, from Emily's from the question about Emily, was that she had that pathway where she went into full-time coaching, but I always coached her during the day. We do extra sessions. When I was at the AIS, what have you got today? What school do you have today? Oh, I've only got English and history. All right, let's go to the boards. We'll start to do some work. So we've had a great relationship, and she's and being involved with the Matildas for 4 years as well, working with Stadge, that was great. And obviously from myself being involved, and she's always asking questions, always asking what I think and what my opinion is, and sometimes I have to be a dad, and sometimes I have to be a coach, and it just works that way.
The fine line to balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a fine line. I mean, when they're younger as well, in particular, you're coming home and they're 12, 13, 14 years of age, and how did I play, Dad? And I'm saying, oh, well, maybe we don't discuss that now. Oh no, I want to know. And so sometimes you drove home with the windows up, and sometimes you drove home down with the windows down, right? Okay.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. But look, we've had a great relationship, and she's done everything. Like she's worked so hard, and she's developed a lot of resilience, and she's playing really good footy at the moment. So we couldn't be more proud of her as a family.
No, 100%. And it's great. Like I said, we're really happy that you're back in our league, and our league can get a coach like you, and the players at Hills will be ecstatic to have someone like yourself there and the club, and great to see you doing well. We'll meet up in a few weeks when we play each other. Hopefully we can do the double over you, but until then, Gary, all the best at Hills, and we'll monitor you closely, and thank you for being part of the show. It was a late call up today, and you gave us your time, and we appreciate that.
No problem, guys, and again, thanks for the invite anytime, and well done. You're contributing to the football, which is so important for for us as a country. And you guys have put this on, and it's fantastic that you do that.
Appreciate it. Thank you for
Thanks,
your kind
Gary.
words.
Thanks,
Good on
Gary.
you. All right, take care.
Take
See you,
care.
buddy.
Bye.
Yeah, Andy, and there's Gary, like I said, legend, played for the Socceroos, daughter flying back at Hills United, and a club like Hills, to have him there and the players, they would get a good buzz. It's a smart move from Tristan, the president, to bring him in.
Well, Chubbs, you're there in a couple of weeks. You'll be shaking hands with this guy on the sideline when you play up against. I mean, it's massive for football out there in Hills, and like I said, you stole my thunder a bit, but they've got such a big catchment out there.
And the big thing for them is they joined up with Hills Association as well, which is massive for them. That's massive 100%. When you have association behind you, as you know, Adrian, and like a Hills area, and they've got the School of Excellence coming in as well. So it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's a big area, very big area, and not just football. Every sport, the whole Hills catchment area, Pappenhausen in NRL, mate. It's a very, very big area. I know Jack Stewart's from up there. He's at Apia. That little hot spot, it's amazing. It's just like, St. Mary's, St. Clair for NRL, the Hills for football, same thing. You look at all the players that come through Blacktown. A lot of them go from there, and they're from the Hills area.
I can tell you as well, boys, they're very, very close to promotion in the girls' youth, from MPL2 up to MPL1. And from memory, I think they're also travelling very well in the senior women's space. So everything they're doing, Chubbs, as you mentioned, off the field, it seems to be working at that level. Naturally, the men's just there in League One, but the boys' youth are in MPL1, as Gary alluded to as well. So, massive club, big catchment, and doing the right things.
Okay, just a bit of our super chat before we turn. While Andy, you get the results up for what games have been played in the World Club Championship, so we can speak about them as well.
Another quick point to touch on after you finish, Chubbs.
Saying hi, guys, Portsmouth fan. He didn't know if you have spoken about any news on the Sikkershit deal. Yeah, we did go through that. He's on his way to Portsmouth. It has been hijacked, so Jack, we can tell you that he's on his way to Portsmouth. He's saying, yeah, they spoke. Again, perfect. I'll have a scroll. And another one saying, come on, Pompey. So a few of the Pompey fans are very happy with Sekicic heading down their way, and I think they will be. It's a good signing.
Boys, I just quickly want to touch on something which was confirmed while we were off air last week, which the rumour's been going around for a while, was the Nicky Carl appointment at Marconi. Yes. Head of football, and I just want to quickly so he joined up mid last week, I understand, attended training sessions and whatnot, and started. I've without mentioning some names, I've got some dads there with their boys in the program, and they said the impact has been instant. Now I just want to quickly run through some results from the weekend. So this is obviously the first weekend that since Nicky's been there. 13 boys won 4-3. Their match day was against Northern Tigers, who's another team that's sort of towards the end there. So obviously their first mission is to stay up in MPL1. They're languishing towards the bottom in the club championship. So the 13 boys 4-3. The 14 boys won 1-0. The 15 boys won 2-1. The 16 boys lost. They lost 5-2. And the 18 boys won as well. So it was almost a clean sweep, boys, on the first week. 18 boys won 1-0. So almost a clean
We know he's done a
sweep.
terrific job at SD Raiders, and I think he'll do it's a smart appointment for Marconi, very smart appointment, and I think he will do it. In the next few years, you're going to see the youth on Marconi really doing wonderful things down there back again. As we know, they were, like when I played there, they were a powerhouse.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out as well. I was at the Bulls Sydney United game on the weekend at King Tom in the youth, and there was 2 cracking, amazing goals. Chubbs, I've actually got footage on it.
Yeah, we've seen them. Unbelievable.
If you saw that, yeah, 2 great goals in the under 15s. I can tell you the second goal, boys. I don't know if you remember Luka Glavash.
Yeah, of course.
Prominent
Adrian
striker.
would know Lucas Glover well too.
Adrian, you know Luca very well. His young boy Milan scored the second of the goals. Absolute great finish. The way that he turned and yeah, it was a bit of an upset result there. The 15s of Sydney United, a 2-1 win over Bulls Academy 15s. But yeah, 2 great goals. You'll never see 2 better goals in the youth league. for me. And there's a lot of it that's out there, but just goes to show what sort of talent we got down there.
Making me feel old, man. I remember playing, breaking into first grade and going up against Glosh, and the reputation he had. And now his son's coming through, so that's insane. It's I haven't seen the goals personally, so I'm going to have to look up.
I'll get Chubbs to forward them to you. Yeah,
please. I want to see him, and it's maybe we've got another decade of Glover scoring goals in the NPL. Who knows?
All right, boys, we've only got 15 minutes left, so let's do a quick recap of what's happening with this tournament that we're all watching now, this World Club Championship, the World Cup. We know there's a massive prize money at the end of it. That's why all these teams are taking it very serious, as we can see. Like, I couldn't believe the lineup that Bayern Munich put against Auckland City. And Auckland City, reading their backstory, is some of their players couldn't even get there because they couldn't afford to go there, which is strange why the FIFA wouldn't get them there.
Part-timers.
Part-timers. I'm sure FIFA could have flown them over there, but I found it ridiculous, like Harry Kane and some of the, like, I know I would have thought Company would be looking to rest some of these players. They won 10-0. Maybe he wanted to play him. I just couldn't believe it. But, Andy, what are some of the results we've seen so far in this competition?
So we started Al Ali and Inter Miami 0-0 draw. That's a game that Adrian watched. And we also had 4 games this morning, boys. As I mentioned, started the show, Bayern Munich 10, Auckland City 0. PSG with a big 4-0 win over Atletico Madrid. So no hangover there from Champions League for PSG. Palmeiras and Porto drew 0-0. Botafogo and Seattle Sounders. Botafogo ran over that one 2-1. So basically, boys, the format you're looking at is similar to the World Cup.
Well, it's exactly the same.
3 or 4 games every day, which is football's heaven, as we know. I've been seeing some memories come up on my phone of 7 years ago, the 2018 World Cup, which saw some fantastic results, and it just gives you some just chills, thinking about World Cup tournaments only 1 year away. But yeah, exactly the same format as you said.
Even tomorrow, look at the games you've got tomorrow. Boca Juniors versus Benfica, Chelsea taking Los Angeles FC, and Flamengo playing Experience. So some big games, especially Boca Juniors. We know how strong they are in the Argentinian league. But one team, Adrian, that's flying, PSG at the moment. I mean, now they've become favourites to win this tournament, and you could see them actually doing the double. They're just on fire at the moment, aren't they?
PSG are absolutely flying, and they sent out a full-strength squad. Nuno Mendes goes and plays the UEFA Nations, comes straight back in, starts the game, and I don't know. I know the red card probably doesn't help Atletico, but I think PSG are showing that there are levels to them right now. I think they're so far ahead. I think, especially I personally noticed that when they played against us, Chubba, in the Champions League, and since then, I kind of have been paying attention, and they are playing phenomenally. But quickly, just about Bayern Munich, I just wanted to say they play this game every year against a lower German division squad. I think it's like 4th division or 5th division. It's a local game they play every year, right? Chubba, every single year they send out full strength team in the first half.
It's just probably the mentality of the club. They've got to win every game.
I think last year was like 23-0 or something, and the season before was 18-0. It's just how they are. And I think Company's got a few questions against him as well.
Because Harry Kane just finished playing 2 internationals. He's talking about his burnout and so on. And then you see Harry Kane on the team sheet. Really? Against Auckland City? I mean, 10-0. Just a bit surprising.
Is that his fault or is that FIFA's fault now? But this is a different level, right?
I mean, he can play who he wants to play. I mean, they pick the 18, 22 players or whatever they're going to take to the tournament. But, yeah, I just felt sorry for Auckland City. And that's something we've got to look at as well. I don't know how Auckland City are part of the Asian thing. It's like, for them, it's great for them being in the competition. But is that what we want to see, that kind of results? I don't know. Not sure about that.
I was hearing rumours that online, because I didn't watch the game live, I was hearing that they actually got them mistaken for the Auckland team in the A-League.
Yes, that's been happening a lot. Yeah. I even heard it on Australian radio on one of the morning breakfast shows, sports shows, that they said, oh, well, they've had a great campaign in the A-League, and one of the pundits turned around and said, oh, no, it's not Auckland FC that's in the A League. It's Auckland City. That's in the local National Premier League competition.
We've got some comedians on here on our super chat. Mickey Deason, Olympic would have given Brian a run for their money. I'm sure they would have, Mickey D. But no. Like I said, look, it's going to be interesting. It's the first time, and I think as the competition gets to the later stages, it's going to be really exciting. And like even tomorrow's game, I find it interesting. I mean, Boca, we know the story with Boca Juniors, Diego Maradona, Argentina, and that's in terms of football. It's a lot of these South American teams, Andy, and these other teams like the Al Hilals from Egypt, the Saudi Arabia. We don't get to see them all the time, so. And when you do see them, it's surprisingly as well how good they really are. I mean, today, Botfriga, the Brazilian team, they were superb today. I watched a little bit of that, highlights of it. They were excellent. So it's these unknown teams that, they've got some quality footballers.
Albs, growing up where we grew up, how many Boca Juniors, even you, Adrian, how many Boca Juniors jerseys did you see when there's school functions or school events?
I see Riquelme everywhere.
Riquelme, one of my favourite players growing up. But yeah, and a lot of the talent that we see, these big name signings from these big European clubs, come from these type of teams. So it's just good to see the younger talent. But and just looking at the odds, Chubbs, and we don't have a betting partner at the moment, but we'll be working on that. So I won't mention where these odds are from. But yeah, as you mentioned, PSG, but there's some big prices for some big clubs: Inter Milan, Borussia Dortmund, Atletico Madrid. Around that 17, 26, 26 and $29 price.
Well, I think with Atletico Madrid losing, their price went through the roof.
I think so, yeah. But look, you just don't know how they're going to look. Let's be honest. It's usually that time of the year. A lot of these players are in Ibiza or in Greece on the Greek islands, lapping it up and enjoying their off season.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Look, this tournament, it's going to be interesting. They had troubles getting crowd there. They finally got the people come. They had big questions. It is where the World Cup's going to be held next year as well. But my biggest question is going to be, let's see these clubs that have gone into this, especially your Man City, Chelsea, how will it affect them when the competition starts back in August? And are these teams going to be able to cope, so with their players, playing this tournament? It's another tournament. Like next year, that's World Cup year, so these players won't be resting again. So it's just going to be interesting to see what effects it does have on these players when they go back to their normal competitions. Because even if you look at PSG, they've played a lot of football now. And it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. That's going to be my biggest thing, especially with the Premier League. And we know the window opened again in a couple of days. It did close for this tournament, but it is opening again on Monday. I believe it will open again. And we've seen some massive signings already. I mean, Liverpool's broken the British transfer record, as we know, for Florent Wirtz for £115 million plus add-ons, which will probably get it to about 150. Huge money. And Man City have already brought in 5-6 players, Newcastle as well. So the transfer window, again, when it opens, it's really going to be, it's heating up again.
Andy, what's going on with Newcastle?
Oh, mate, look, I don't think there's going to be too. Look, I think there's a couple of players in mind, but as
Gordon and Isca are always talked about, but I can't see any of them leaving, Andy.
Which one, sorry?
Gordon and Isca still talked about they could potentially move. I just can't see it.
Yeah. No, I can't see it happening as well, Chubbs. I think I've mentioned it before. They've sort of managed to balance the books quite well and are expecting to have a pretty decent spend this transfer window. The one that's popped up in terms of who they're interested in is João Pedro, who's on a bit of the outer there at Brighton, and I think would be a fantastic pickup, a great attacking player. And we know with Newcastle boys, you've got to admit the way we've spent quite wisely and transfer wise have done it quite well and brought in players that not many people thought would be successful, but have turned out to be. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. What about Garnacho? What are you guys hearing about Garnacho? Apparently he wants to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. He definitely won't be at Man United, so it's going to be interesting where he ends up.
I'm a big fan of Garnacho. I think he's got everything but an end product. If he gets an end product, he's a 100 million plus player. He skins a player with ease. He's rapid. He does everything so easily.
Well,
And then he gets
he was a big
across.
talent when he came out of Man U. He was going to be the next big thing, but unfortunately, with the new coach over him, things have turned sour. And yeah, he'll be on the march.
Honestly, he's one of those ones where you got to manage the ego. You know, you got to manage the
Yeah.
ego. You got to manage all that off-field stuff. And if they get a coach or if a manager can do that, he's definitely a talent. You're not playing at that
He's
level.
still 20.
Goals. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, very young, still very young. So, mate, I'd take him in Newcastle. You know, but you just got to build the environment around him and that the culture. Where obviously that's been struggling at Man United, and you see a lot of players that have left there and gone to see what they're doing at other clubs, you know, and that's not a coincidence. Let's be honest.
No, 100%. A bit funny when we seen TAA do that interview for Real Madrid in Spanish. Your thoughts on that? Doesn't look like he learnt it in 2 weeks, did he?
What's the age restriction on the stream, Trevor? Am I allowed to go? Hey, if I told you how I really felt, we'd be kicked off YouTube. But that was disgusting for me. I think I know we haven't spoken about it really, but the only reason why people stopped booing was because the senior, the chief, that he's told them not to. Because now, now to do what he did. Can you imagine? You seen those photos of all, Darwin Núñez talking Spanish and Trent acting like he hasn't had an idea what he's been saying for the last 2 weeks? They've been saying like Trent's been talking rubbish that he doesn't understand Spanish. But yeah, mate, he went out there and spoke fluent, and that's not going to sit well with Liverpool fans. They'll remember that. That was, that's not on. But I wasn't happy. I watched it. I had my mates hounding me over it, so I can't imagine how everyone else was thinking about it either. I'm not happy about it.
Draw comes out next week as well, again for the English Premier League. That's exciting to be watching. We always get excited with the draw coming out.
I missed it already, Chubba. I missed it already. Depressed.
Yeah.
Depressed. I had nothing to do.
Florian Wirtz broke the British transfer record, but a lot of talk, Andy. He's a one-generational player like your Messis, like your Renatos, like in this kind. He's not there yet, but he's one of those players that they believe in. Bundesliga, he's been on fire, and he's going to be an exciting prospect for the Premier League. Do you think 22 years old, do you think the transfer is going to bother him, do you think? Or you think he'll settle in pretty quickly at Liverpool?
I was telling a Liverpool dad on the weekend who mentioned the only ones that are thinking he's gonna fail, and you guys can guess it, are Man United fans. For me, I'm obviously quite envious that you guys have managed to pull off a signing like this. He is an absolutely top quality player, and the price tag shows that. Yeah, and anyone that says he isn't is just a hater or just deluded, to be honest, because you got to see what sort of football this kid can play, and he's still quite young. I think he can absolutely be a superstar, as what his price tag is saying. So, look, congratulations to you guys, because you definitely got a good one on your hands.
Andy, before we signed him, he was linked with Bayern, Man City, and Real Madrid. Man City was saying that he's going to be better than De Bruyne. Real Madrid was saying that he's better than Jude Bellingham, and Bayern Munich was saying that he's better than Musiala. And now all of a sudden he's shit. So it's all fun and games, and people do get upset.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a lot more jealousy, I think, boys. Like I said, I'm obviously quite envious of you, and
you got Tonali. You got Tonali, but we don't.
Oh yeah, well that's true. But yeah, I'm just interested to see what he can do, and it's just a great coup for the Premier League too. To be able to watch him week in, week out, and it obviously makes Liverpool stronger. They're going to be hard to beat. I think they'll be going into the season as favourites to win the league again. Let's be honest, because there's been some great signings, not only with Wirtz, but with the defender as well, whose name escapes me, Frimpong. So. It's an interesting one to see how good he goes. I think the culture they've got there, Chubbs, I don't think it'll be difficult for him to fail.
Yeah. All right, boys, that comes to the end of the show again. Football Fever will be back next week, bigger and better, and still thrillers. Tony will join us as well next week. We'll have more breaking stories. Keep an eye out as they happen, we'll break them here on Chubba TV during the week as well. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Gary Van Eggmond, for joining us as well again today. And thank you, Andy. Thank you, Adrian, for your time. We'll catch up next week. Enjoy your trip to Bali, Adrian.
Enjoy.
We'll answer the call next week, boys. No worries. See you later.
Mate, enjoy. See you, boys.
See ya.